Right then, let's get going. So this is episode 20 of the Snatch Chat Podcast. Today I am on my own. I've got a bunch of questions that we are going to run through. We've got a good array of questions really. Some on coaching, some on sort of technical issues, and then others that are sort of just being chucked in there. So let's get ourselves started. First question, if you could train with any weightlifter in history for one session, who would it be? Me, when I first started weightlifting, I learned through CrossFit, but I knew that there was more to sort of learn. I think it was, what I found with CrossFit is that you were learning the shell of weightlifting. This is the sort of movement. Pull it, once it's overhead, lower into that bottom part of the lift. Now, I think I've always been a perfectionist. So before CrossFit, I used to swim. And it was all about sort of like perfecting your technique to sort of get as fast or to put in the fastest score possible. And then when I started learning weightlifting through CrossFit, it was like there was so much more, but it wasn't necessarily being sort of taught to you. And then I'm going on here and well over this sort of question, but we'll get back to it. And then I enjoy CrossFit, but there were so many different moving parts: gymnastics, engine, weightlifting, cardiovascular fitness, general strength, and there was just so many different things. And I really enjoyed or wanted to get really good at like weightlifting. In my head I was like, 100 kilo snatch would be absolutely fantastic. I just want to be able to hit 100 kilo snatch. So I was going onto YouTube videos and just watching loads of different YouTube videos, all things gym, their videos. Hook Grip were putting up videos from like world championships, and I was just hooked watching these events and watching these huge weights being sort of thrown overhead in the snatch and clean and jerk. Instagram wasn't necessarily the same back in like 2013. Like, it wasn't videos, it was just literally a square image, and people just used to upload images. So I'd go to YouTube, and I remember watching two people, Clarence Kennedy, he's insane, and Dmitry Klokov. And I was literally watching those two, and they're totally different lifters, and the way I sort of learned was just trying to copy the way that they moved. Obviously that isn't right, and we've, over these 20 episodes, hopefully you've got the understanding that you can't just copy someone else basically. So if I could train with any weightlifter in history, it would be those two people, because I think I've followed them the longest, listened to and viewed everything they've sort of put out there, especially Dmitry Klokov, and I've sort of just lived the way that they sort of coached, taught the Olympic lifting movements. So they would be my two training partners. Now, if you know Dmitry Klokov or Clarence Kennedy, or you know someone that knows them, get them to listen to this. I would absolutely love to have a training session with them. Question number 2. What's a training habit you had to unlearn to get better at weightlifting? Okay. And I think it's the thing that I bat on to all of my clients that I have, especially people that I have that come into consultations. They want to get better at weightlifting. Where the hell do they start? They're doing this, and this. And I think the thing that I had to unlearn was more is not better. Now, it's really weird because when I used to swim, it was all about the meterage. It's all about doing more. More training sessions meant you were going to be a better athlete. Doing more meterage per session, you were going to be a better athlete. Doing more on top of your swimming was going into the gym, and going into the gym more often was going to get you better at swimming. So all of these things, the only thing that I learned from my coach is if you want to get good at something, you do it more, which is true, but not to the extent that I did in swimming. Okay, so when naturally in weightlifting, I had this sort of like bad habit of like, okay, I need to get really good at weightlifting. Sacked off the CrossFit. It was probably going to sort of disappear anyway as I found my love for weightlifting, but I don't necessarily think it was a thing that I just had to swipe to the side. But I did that because that's all I knew from swimming. And then when I got into weightlifting, the biggest mistake that I made was not getting a coach, not having anyone sort of guiding me through this journey. It was me and YouTube, okay? And the biggest thing that I would unlearn was we didn't need to do more, okay? The actual quality of what you are doing is actually better than the quantity of things that you are doing. So back then I would do hang snatches, block snatches, high hang snatches, slow snatches, pause snatches, loads of different variants within the week. And it was literally like me throwing shit at the wall, and then once something stuck, perfect, winner, winner, winner. I'd hit a PB, and then I'd do exactly the same again. And that is literally what I would do, okay? totally the opposite to what I do now and what I tell my lifters to do. It is all about the quality of the movement. Once you've found the single most important area that you need to fix within your Olympic lifts, that should be the sole focus. Maybe 2 to 3 different exercise variants to highlight and improve that area. Squeeze as much out of that sponge as possible. So think of each exercise as a sponge. As soon as you start to squeeze it, you're getting the goodness out of it. You're literally going to squeeze it dry until absolutely nothing comes out of it, and then you make that exercise change. Where before it was sort of just throw it, it didn't stick, perfect, right, do something else. No, it didn't stick, right, do something else. And you were darting around, doing a really shit job, getting injuries, picking up injuries because you were trying to lift more, do more reps, more sets, more training sessions. And I was literally just driving myself into the ground. I got, good by doing that. I hit a 100 kilo snatch and a 140 clean and jerk. Gave myself a hernia. I've got 2 battered knees. And I literally went every 6 weeks and ended up having a week to 2 weeks where I couldn't train because of tendonitis in my elbows. It was not the way to train, okay? It's definitely not. Question number 3. What technical issue do you see the most when people send you lifting videos? The thing that I think I probably focus on the most with any video that I get sent is what is happening in that start position. The reason why I solely focus on that start position, because if something is out in that start position, it's a domino effect. Something else is going to fall apart in the rest of that movement, okay? If that start position is absolutely solid and there's nothing that I would like to change, I would look for that next phase up. What is happening in that hang position? I'd always go from the floor upwards into that movement, because you'll always find that domino effect. Whatever happens previously is a knock-on effect to what actually happens at the end of that lift. Really funny, because when you learn the Olympic lifting movements, you come down, or that's how I coach it, the top-down approach. But when you analyse a lift and you're looking for the area that you fix, it's always start from the bottom and fix all the way up to the top. Because you could fail a lift a certain way, and that not necessarily being the issue that is at hand or how you sort of turned over and hit that bottom position. It could literally be because your hips were slightly too high at the start, which meant then you were parallel position at the hang position, which meant you have to overwork in that second phase, causing you to arch back. You're then jumping forwards, the lift's gone to shit. Fix that start position, 9 times out of 10, it fixed the rest of that chain of the movement. Next question. Do you think weightlifters overcomplicate nutrition? I think it's easily done is to overcomplicate nutrition. I think the biggest issue that people have got with weightlifting is potentially trying to compete in a lighter weight class. Okay, you've got all these different weight classes. You think you're going to become more competitive in a weight class below, so then you start a cut, you start reducing your calories. Then you start reducing your water because you need to try and get that there on for a comp day. And they get hung up on the fact that they need to compete at the lightest weight category to give the best result. So really, I think it's sort of about overcomplicating it. I think we're overcomplicating the sport, and we should just compete at whatever weight we are, because what you'll probably find is even if you hit maintenance calories, you might end up starting to slightly reduce your calories and then fall into that next weight class. But you don't really want to necessarily, in my opinion, work to get into a lighter weight class unless you are super competitive on the competition stage, and it's going to be the difference between qualifying for nationals, Europeans, worlds. You will drop a weight class. But if you're literally in a tier 3 competition or looking to try and get to British Championships, I probably wouldn't reduce a weight class, because by reducing a weight class, probably, most likely, unless you've got someone with good nutritional knowledge in your corner, you're probably then going to have a negative impact on your performance. Okay? I think we can overcomplicate nutrition by looking for or trying to focus on protein, when really we probably want to focus on balanced, nutritious meals, high in fibre, to actually look after the body and making sure that hydration is key. I would say that a lot of the people that I have worked with and we've looked at tightening nutrition or around the nutrition is that the biggest issue that they've got is hydration, actually not the nutrition, okay? You don't need pinpoint perfect nutrition, you just need good nutrition. I'm hitting my protein, I've got carbs, fats, and different sort of fibre and nutrients within my meals. The biggest thing that I think is going to make a difference is actually being hydrated properly hydrated, that's then going to benefit your nutrition and benefit your training as a whole. Next question. What lift do you find harder to coach? Snatch, clean or split jerk? I would say because I enjoy the snatch the most, I actually enjoy lifting in the snatch and coaching the snatch. I find the snatch the easiest. I think the hardest is the jerk. Okay, there's different variants. Variants suit different people, and there's things that it's not. It is a complex movement. There's a lot of moving parts within that jerk. The biggest thing that we've got to try and focus on or remember is that the jerk is very much like the snatch and the clean. We've got to try and get underneath that bar, okay, and find a nice solid base. So it's trying to put these things together in a short range of dip and drive to actually create momentum. So yeah, I'd probably say the jerk is the harder one to coach. You've got a narrow margin of error, and then you've also got to look at the variations of the jerk and then see what is going to be the best for the athlete. Next one. What is one thing you changed in your training that gave you the biggest improvement in your lifts? What is the one thing that changed in your training? The biggest thing... Oh, this is a good question. What is the one thing that you changed? Okay, and it goes back to the jerk, actually. Okay, this is weird because it's not the way I necessarily thought of the jerk. Jerk, dip drive, I've got to take the weight overhead. Okay, yes, okay, I want my legs to do the majority of the work. The biggest cue that actually really worked for me was not to think about finding my strong lockout, but instead, how long can I keep that bar on my shoulders? Okay, and what I found from that then is that actually taught me to utilise maximal force and power through my legs. So I think that was probably the thing that was like a massive change of focus. It's like, oh shit, okay, I don't need to try and take this bar overhead. Yes, I know I need my legs to work, but I'm literally not even going to think about taking that bar off my shoulders. Allow maximal force to be placed on the bar. As I attacked the split, it was easier to find the lockout. Yeah, so I think that was the biggest thing. What is the most misunderstood part of the snatch? Okay, we need to take the snatch overhead. How do we take that bar overhead? People end up starting to pull and punch that bar. What you probably want to think about or revert back to is the higher you jump, the higher the bar travels. Okay? Where even when that bar reaches my hip crease, I am never going to teach someone to pull that bar. Arms stay long and you're going to initiate a vertical jump. Literally, when it's super light, exaggerate that jump. Literally execute a vertical jump. As you jump, you stamp into your receipt position. By doing that at lighter weights, as that weight builds, you won't be able to jump as high, okay, but you've got that same emphasis of that jump, putting momentum behind that bar to actually give you that time and reassurance to actually hit and stabilise in that bottom position. What's one recovery habit that actually made a noticeable difference to your training? Creating a bedtime routine. I am fucking so far out of a bedtime routine. It is insane at the moment. Little one doesn't necessarily want to sleep at night. You're up at different hours. Your sleep is all over the place. Saying that, I don't necessarily feel tired right now, mid-afternoon, but 6-7 o'clock when it's starting to like wind down, have your evening meal, get ready for bed, I'm absolutely knackered. And I think because then you're absolutely knackered at that time, your priorities of that sleep routine like fall sort of to the wayside. But getting yourself a good bedtime routine was probably the biggest recovery habit that made a noticeable difference. Things that I would look at doing is having no screen time an hour and a half to 2 hours before I want to be in bed. When I'm there is reducing, with blue light, so that's TV, phone, that's why the phone's away, and I would look to read a book whilst I'm in bed, okay? Reading that book then sent me to sleep, put the book aside, I'd have a really, really good night's sleep. Other people that I've coached, and one thing that we really highlight on is getting into a good sleep routine. I know people that meditate before bed, potentially even stretch before bed, and by doing these things, you are naturally allowing your body to lower itself down and allow you to get into this position ready to actually fall asleep. Stretching, meditating, reading are probably the three things that I would always tell a lifter to look at when creating the bedtime routine. But I think it's the biggest thing that probably does still get overlooked with people's training. Next question. Do you think most lifters train too heavy or not heavy enough? Definitely train too heavy. training cycles that I do would potentially or definitely start off relatively low. We'd be working between 70 and 80%. Volume's going to be high, especially once we're at that 70-75% mark, and we would look to try and get in as many reps as possible. Okay, if we're making a technical change, getting lightweight and a good volume of reps in is giving you exposure to actually make that technical change. Once you can make that technical change at 70 to 75%, you're then going to look to build to 80 to 85%. Volume comes down because the intensity is increasing, but as that intensity increases, you're looking to still make those technical changes that you made at the lighter weights as that weight progresses. As the weight progresses, you might find at 82%, that bad habit is then starting to fall in line. What you wouldn't do is then carry on progressing, because that's what the program is intended to do. Instead, I would look at creating a larger volume at that intensity. So when I then push it back up, I'm still making that same good quality movement. I do not want to allow myself to fall back into routine. People fall back into routine by trying to move too fast through this learning phase, but also by adding on weight too soon. Okay? Do it really good at lighter weights. Do it really good at moderate weights. If it starts to fall away, do more reps. More reps, wait until it's really good before then you progress. As you progress, make sure you've got good weights, good reps under the belt. If you're starting to see that it's falling away, hold that position, increase the volume at that intensity before you always look to push on. Never look to put a plaster over a crack and hope it's going to hold, okay? Because it's not, especially as once you start then progressing through those intensities. Look to build a capacity, force yourself to make that technical change, fix the crack, don't just plaster over it and then move on. Next question. Have you ever had a phase where a lift completely disappeared? Man, this is one question that I probably get asked so much, like each week. Now, the one thing that I joke with all my athletes is that when snatch feels good, clean never feels good. Or clean and jerk doesn't feel good. When your clean and jerk feels good, your snatch doesn't feel good. Nothing is ever going to sort of fit all in the same position. One's always going to feel better than the other. Okay, that's natural. You'll find that as one of these feels good and the other one doesn't, strength is coming in the waves as well. Squats feel good at 80%, 80 to 85%, brilliant. Snatch feels shit, but clean jerk feels good, perfect, lovely. Right, and all of a sudden, squats feeling good, snatch is feeling pretty shit, clean jerk's now feeling good. And it will constantly be this wave. As long as, and I say this quite often, as long as the peaks, when things feel the hardest, are increasing, and the highs are increasing, we have this natural degree of trend going upwards. That's a win, okay? Winner, winner, we're making progress. If this trend is that the highs are getting lower and the lows are getting lower, or it's sort of staying the same, we've got areas that we can work on. But if we're making progress within X and Y, perfect. You're going to stay between this, but you'll find that it has peaks and troughs. But as long as the peaks are getting higher and the troughs are getting higher, we've got a trend that is showing improvements, winner, winner. Next question. What's one exercise that improved your Olympic lifts indirectly? So I think I am gifted in the terms of strength comes naturally to me. One area that doesn't necessarily come back to me is power. One thing that I found really helped to improve my weightlifting, because I'd always find that my snatch and clean would feel really heavy, really slow in that first phase of the lift, even though it was a weight that I could move. But it then played on your mind in the snatch and clean and jerk, and then it made everything 10 times harder. So I think the thing that helped improve my Olympic lifting the most was deficit pulls or deficit deadlifts. Increasing the pulling levers, and increasing that weight. And then once you start to get rid of that deficit and you're working from the floor, everything starts to feel super, super snappy. So I definitely think that is something that really worked for me. What's one exercise that improved... Oh no, sorry, that's the question I've just done. Next one. What do you think keeps most lifters stuck at the same numbers for years? Very similar to what I said earlier on. I think it's just trying to do too much, having multitude of areas that they're trying to fix, rather than fixing one and two jobs and making sure that they do a really, really good job of it, okay? I think a lot of weightlifters rush the process of trying to make technical changes and get better at the weightlifting skills, rather than making sure that they're doing a really good job taking their time before they sort of progress it. The one thing that keeps most lifters stuck at the same numbers for years are the ones that are trying to rush the process and not have a clear focus on what the program is intended, because you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different areas that you're looking to try and fix. Next one. What's a technical change that initially made your lifts feel worse before they got better? Clean grip position. I naturally had a close grip position on my clean. Getting my hands wider was going to help, especially for my extension phase. And I'd always want to revert back to the closer grip clean because that's what I was used to. And things felt really shit at the start. But by persevering and adjusting, still finding a wider grip because that's what is needed, but finding something that really works for me, worked a treat. And then that's when I got the most out of my Olympic lifting skills. I had a really close grip. I'd find that as soon as I passed the knee, I'd try and be bending my arms. I get a wider grip so the bar reaches my hip crease. I found that my arms stayed longer through that movement. Okay, making the first phase of my lift nice and powerful, so I felt strong. I had confidence to actually execute the rest of the lift. The rest of the lift wasn't the issue, but it definitely is that start position. Ryan, penultimate question. We've got 2 questions to go. If someone only had 3 sessions per week to train, what should they prioritise? Okay, I would look at doing 2 snatch variants, 1 snatch as a main lift, 1 clean and jerk variant, whether that's splitting up the clean and the jerk, but it being a variant of that movement, and then session 2, clean and jerk focus. I am looking to get good at this in the snatches and this in the clean and jerks. Having a super focus on that rather than I'm scatty, I'm trying to improve my snatch, I'm trying to improve my clean and jerk, I need to improve the speed under the bar as well as the pulling strength off the floor, keep my arms long, you're getting yourself confused. What's a technical change that initially made your lifts feel worse before they got better? That for me is a clean grip position. I naturally wanted to go into my close grip because that's what I got used to. Getting wider, I knew that it was going to improve my extension phase of my movement. So by persevering and staying with it, it's now paying dividends in the rest of my movement. So yeah, if someone had 3 sessions per week, how would they train? They would snatch 3 times a week, 2 variants, 1 main lift. Clean and jerk twice a week. Clean and jerk variations once a week. Lifts, clean and jerk in session 4. I might look to squat or back squat or front squat once or twice a week. So that's 2 squatting movements. I might pull once a week, or it might find that leg strength isn't my weakest. I'm going to take my foot off the pressure on squats. I'm going to do that once, but I'm going to have a higher focus on hang movements because that's the area I need to fix. Last question. What's one unpopular opinion you have about weightlifting training? An unpopular opinion. An unpopular opinion you have about weightlifting training. An unpopular opinion. I think when it comes to the Olympic lifting movements, people can focus on their arms because they're trying to take that bar from A to B. Okay? Not necessarily an unpopular opinion, I suppose, because there are many coaches saying that it's not a pull. But I think the thing that is confusing is when you know that the movement is a pull and you naturally pull. So the way to get about that is to forget about the movement being a pull and treating it very much like a push. I'm going to push off the floor. Once that bar is in my hang position, I am pushing that bar into my hips. As I extend, I am pushing myself into my deep squat. Changing the way that you focus on the snatch and the clean and jerk is going to make a big difference. You're always thinking about pushing in these phases rather than pulling. Because you might think about pulling as I'm going to pull the bar from the floor into my hang position, you're naturally going to use those arms. But as soon as you start to think about pushing, 9 times out of 10, you keep the weight through the midfoot, your arms stay nice and long because you're getting used to your legs doing the movement for you. But as soon as you think about pulling that bar, that is when the power ends and it becomes a lot harder. So yeah, I think that is definitely my unpopular opinion. Thinking of the lift as a push rather than a pull. And every phase of that movement is a push and it's not a pull. That is the end of the Q&A. I think that's been really, really good, really powerful. There's been some really good questions in there, especially the ones where it sort of got you thinking around technical changes, what areas do people overcomplicate certain things, and how basically do you execute the snatch, clean and split jerk. So hopefully you've enjoyed episode 20, which is absolutely insane. We've been doing this 20 weeks. The idea was every single week I do one podcast. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 weeks, which I'm really happy about. I've stuck to something and I feel like I've done a really, really good job at sticking to it. I flipping love podcasting. I think I get so much out of this. Yeah, it's just fantastic. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions on anything I've sort of answered there and you want any more information, drop it in the comments on YouTube and Spotify, which this is positioned on. If you are in a position where you are wanting to learn the Olympic lifting movements, or that your goal is to fix certain habits, I have got the school community called the Oates Performance Lab. Inside there, I've got the weightlifting workshop. Now, the weightlifting workshop is probably the best free thing that I've ever created for Olympic lifters. Literally, it goes through the 3 cycles that every lifter will go through. Cycle 1, learning the foundations of the movement. Section 2, building the actual lift. So how we learn the top-down approach of the snatch, clean and split jerk. And then cycle 3, how to fix, cue and drills certain technical faults that happen, or common faults that happen in the snatch, clean and split jerk. It's totally free. I've added the link to the school community in the comment caption below. Join, go through those videos, start mastering your weightlifting. It's literally free to join the group, free to access those videos. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week for episode 21, which is insane. See you later.